So it's a new month, which means it's a new theme, and the theme for February is, come on, get real. Yeah, so get real about what? Get real about life, get real about relationships, get real about manifesting hopes and dreams and intentions. Does that sound good to you? Are you ready to you want to get real with all this stuff? Good. Well, I'm glad, because that's what we're going to do by bringing what I said when I came up with this idea for the month, is to bring a large dose of reality to the table. And when I said reality, that was reality with a capital R. So what does that really mean? What is reality with a capital R another word for? Thank you for being so on top of that. I'm happy. Yay, you listened to all last month, right? When we gave all of our new definitions. So yes, really being a big dose of God, reality, God's truth into our lives. And to set the tone, to kick off our series, I want to take a look today at an idea that is very prevalent in our science of mind and even broader New Thought teachings. And the idea is that life brings us lessons, sometimes difficult lessons, to test our faith, to test our spiritual resolve, to just really, call us up, that life or God gives us lessons. And you may be familiar with the quote that's attributed to Mother Teresa, which was, I know, there it is, I know God won't give me anything more than I can handle. I just wish he didn't trust me so much, right? So the question of the morning, is that true? Is there really a force, God, life, whatever you want to call it, that's outside of us that is giving us tests, that is giving us difficult situations to test our faith or to test our resolve? Is that really true? Well, I'm going to offer an idea that no, it isn't. That no, life doesn't test us. That no, we are not being tested by some outside force, if you will, that's making life hard for us to, buoy our faith. I don't believe that happens. And if you do, well, I'm just inviting you into an expanded way of looking at this today. I'm inviting you into perhaps a new idea. This is called New Thought. We are in New Thought. So I'm inviting you today to have a new thought about this idea of life lessons. So what do I believe? Well, first of all, my belief is premised on the idea that God is the eternal goodness, the eternal loving kindness, and the eternal givingness of life to all. And I wish I had said those words. Those are not, I did say them, but I wish I had originated them. They're not mine. They're words of our founder, Dr. Ernest Holmes, which is contained in the document called Declaration of Principle, or the statement called What We Believe, which was a series of I believe statements that appeared for the first time in 1927 in the Science of Mind magazine. Now, of course, if you were here last week, you already knew that because I shared that last week and I shared where it came from. But again, I believe that God is eternal goodness, eternal loving kindness, and the eternal givingness of life to all. And so I don't think in that statement there is room anywhere in there for the idea of a God life that gives us difficult life lessons or tests. So what do I believe then, and what do I want to share with you this morning about these things that might seem like difficult lessons, that seem like tests, these things in life that are difficult, that are challenging, that are painful, that cause us to suffer, all of those things, because I know we have them, right? Let me just see a show of hands. Has anybody in this room not had a challenge that really felt like, oh boy, I don't know that I can do this. This feels like a hard test. Anybody not have that? Okay, so look around and see no hands up. Yeah, right. Who has not had one in the last 15 minutes, Bill says, right? So maybe a few more hands could go up then, right? So we do have these experiences. I'm not saying we don't have experiences that can very much feel like tests or challenges, that feel like we're being, given this difficult lesson. Here's how I invite us to shift that, to have a new thought about this. But first, I need you to take a breath, because this is high and holy work and personal responsibility time. What I believe is that the essence of our being, that the God that lives and moves and has its being within us, as us, that the internal spark of life that only wants to express more fully as us and through us, invites into our experience things that will allow us to release whatever in our humanness has gotten in the way of that divine spark. So without blame, without any self-blame, so this is not a talk on self-blame and beating ourselves up for creating experiences in our life, but it is a way to look at anything that's happened in our life as the fact that our soul, if you will, our essence, called it in so that we might shed whatever is standing in the way of our being fully expressed as the divine. So that God might be more fully God in us, to quote Meister Eckhart. He said, "Let God be God in you." So I don't think there's an external force that tests us. I don't think that at all. I do think there's an internal urge to express at the highest human level possible. And because we aren't infinite in our humanness, we are always reaching out to express more infinity. Ernest Holmes said it so beautifully. I love this quote in the Science Mind textbook, and just a quick little story about this. I knew the quote, but I didn't know exactly how it went, and I wanted to share it with you exactly. And I have a concordance, which is a concordance to my textbook, and so I'm looking up every word that I think might be in this quote, and I can't find it. It's not there, and so I just took a breath. So here is following intuition, right, and allowing and trusting. A little aside, but nonetheless, I think fun and important. So I just sat there for a moment, and I quit trying to think of words that would be in this quote, and I just sat there, and I said, okay, expansion. Maybe that's a word. So I opened the concordance, and I find expansion, and I hear on page 30 is a quote on expansion. So I open the book, and page 30 is over here. Actually, for you guys, it's over here. And I'm reading this about expansion, and I go, no, that's not it. That's not it. And my memory says that the quote's on the other side. It's on an odd-numbered page. So I look to the other side, page 31. Boom! There it was. So I just love how God works. I love it when we get out of our own way. So here's what he said. We reach out to infinity, and since we cannot encompass infinity, and he means in our physical human experience, we cannot encompass infinity, we shall always be expanding and always enlarging our capacity to know and to experience. So I believe that our essence calls into our experience those things that allow us, that give us the opportunity to expand and to enlarge our capacity to know who we are. That's what life lessons in my book are all about. And I would even like us to change the term lesson, although Ernest Holmes uses them. Uses that term. In the quote this morning that I shared with you, he used the term lesson. I'm going to give you a quote later where he uses the term lesson. I would love us to shift that, though, this morning, away from the idea of lesson, because for me anyway, that connotes tests and difficulties, and an outside entity being that's testing me. Let's call them growth opportunities. How's that? right? It's a growth opportunity. It's an opportunity for expansion. It's an opportunity to deepen and enlarge our knowing of who we are. I love this note from the universe by Mike Dooley. He said, you all know what notes from the universe are. They come to you in your email and it's directed to you. It says your name and it's from God or the universe. This one came into my email inbox some time ago. It said, if it weren't for your challenges, Michele, how would you even know that there are still things you misunderstand? You wouldn't know. So bless them, embrace them, and give thanks for them. Tally-ho, the universe. But, oh darn, isn't it actually easier? Don't we sometimes, maybe don't we, a lot of the times, just want to blame something else or somebody else, even God? Like, oh, that was God testing me. It was me. The essence of me, the inner me, not the conscious me so much, but the me that wants to more fully express calling this into my experience. So what if we could bless them, whatever they are? What if we could embrace them, whatever they may be? What if we could give thanks for them because we knew that they were here for us, for our expansion, for our growth, for us to become more of who we already are? And of course, that's our paradox. We're already whole, perfect, and complete. But there are things in our human experience that stand in the way of that full expression. So these things that occur in our lives are here to help us burn away, if you will, that which stands in the way. So I want to give you two parables this morning, not Jesus' parables, the master parable teller, but parables nonetheless. And it's interesting, and again, listening to one's intuition, my intuition, I've told both of these before. And not that long ago, I usually try to, if I'm going to repeat a story, I try to give it like a couple of years in between, to let us forget it. But it hasn't been that long since I've told both of these, and yet they both came to me, and I remembered both of them as I was contemplating and planning for today. And my humanness said, no, you can't tell those. You've already told them. And my divine said, no, they're perfect and people need to hear them. My humanness said, no, but people are going to get bored because they've heard them before and they're going to think I don't have any new stories and I just have to recycle old stuff. And my intuition said, they're perfect for today and you must tell them. And so I had a little tug of war for a while. Do you ever have tug of wars with your intuition? Right, I had a little tug of war, but eventually the God of my being won out. And I'm so glad of that, and I usually let that happen, not always, but usually. So I'm going to tell you both these, one now and one in a little bit, that I think just so my intuition said perfectly fit for this morning. And even if you've heard them before, they bear hearing again. So the first one is about this idea of how do we look at, how do we handle, how do we approach when life seems to be giving us a test or a lesson or a challenge. How can we look at it? How can we bless it? Can we be grateful for it? Can we allow it to take us to be who we came here to be? So the story goes like this. It was a young woman who was having some challenges in her life. As a matter of fact, a lot of challenges. And it seemed like she had one, she'd kind of solve it, and then another one would come. And then she'd have solved that, and another one would come. And she was frustrated at life, and I'm sure we've all been, where we just kind of like, oh, here we go again. Frustrated with life. And so she decided she wanted to get some wisdom from her father, because she thought her father was very smart and very wise, and he was so understanding. And so she decided to go to her dad to just ask him for some wisdom. And so she goes to have coffee with him one morning, goes to her former home where she used to live with mom and dad, and sat down and was talking to dad. And as she's talking to him, he gets up. She thinks that's kind of odd. And he takes 3 pots out of the cabinet and he puts water in them and he puts them on the stove, turns the fire up full blast. And then she's telling him, and he's doing this stuff, and he gets some carrots and puts them in one pot of water, and he gets an egg and puts it in another pot, and he gets some ground coffee beans and puts it in another pot. And then he sits down, and she's talking, and he's listening, and just talking, and he's not saying much. He's more listening. And 20 minutes go by, and he hasn't really given her much advice or wisdom or support, and she's a little frustrated. And then he gets up, and he goes over, and he turns the fire off of each of those 3 things. He fishes out the carrots and puts them on a plate. He fishes out the egg, and he puts it on a plate, and he pours the water into a cup. And he said, and he brings them to his daughter. And he said, so, would you take a bite of the carrot? And she did, and it was icky and mushy and tasteless and ruined. And then he said, well, here, try the egg. So she took a while to get it, even a portion of that shell peeled off, but she did. And the egg was, of course, very, 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 very hard-boiled, and it was inedible. Couldn't eat it. And then he said, well, take a sip. So she takes a sip of the coffee and like, oh, well, finally, that's good. And then she says, Dad, so this is a very interesting experiment, but I want to know what in the heck does it have to do with me and my problems? And he said, well, the carrots, the egg, and the ground coffee all experienced the same adversity. They were all in the boiling water for the same amount of time, and yet each one of them responded differently. The carrot went in strong and tough and came out weak and even mushy. The egg went in delicate and fragile, covered by a thin shell, and yet came out hardened. The coffee beans, the coffee grounds, went in and came out exactly the same. Even after they were boiled for 20 minutes, they hadn't changed. They stayed true to who they are, but they changed the water around them. So he said, when adversity knocks on your door, how do you respond? Do you go in strong and tough, but when something strikes, you become soft and mushy? Do you go in fluid, but when adversity hits, something hardens in you? Or do you look at an adversity, at a challenge, just like the coffee looked at it? The coffee didn't change who it was, but it changed the world around it. He said, my darling daughter, the best comfort and advice I can give you is to be like the coffee beans. When things are their worst, remember who you are, stay true to yourself, and you will change the world around you. I will add, stay true to yourself, your true nature, and more of it will come out and be expressed. So, accepting, I'm going on the assumption that you're accepting that maybe there aren't tests and hard, diverse, life lessons that are difficult for us, but in fact, our soul calling us into a higher level. I do want to give you 4 heads up about these growth opportunities. Quick heads up. You may know them already, but you may forget them when you're in the middle of it. So here is the first one. The first one is that you can't escape having them. You can't escape having life experiences. In this humanness, we're here to grow and expand. We're here to express more of the God of our being. And as we do that, then we experience levels of success, quote unquote, in this world. But the first thing we're here to do is not to have success. The first thing we're here to do is express who we are, fully and completely to the best of our ability at an ever-expanding level, because as we can't encompass the finite, as Ernest Holmes says, so we're always expanding. The success in this world, whether it is health or financial success or relationships, that comes as a result of who we become. So we cannot avoid having these life experiences. And there's a wonderful story. This isn't my second parable. You've not heard this one before. But it's told that Ptolemy, who was the king of Alexandria centuries ago, expressed his impatience at Euclid's elaboration on the explanation of geometry. He just went on and on about explaining geometry. And the king said, "Isn't there a shorter way to learn geometry?" "Sire," replied Euclid, "in the country there are 2 kinds of roads, the hard road for the common people and the easy road for the royal people. But in geometry, all must go the same way. There is no royal road to learning." So we're all on the same path, on the same journey. And if we want to have an awakened experience in this lifetime, then this is what we signed up for. So idea number 1 is that you can't escape your growth opportunities. The second one is that the growth opportunity is repeated until you get it. The growth opportunity is repeated until you get it. The growth opportunity is repeated until you get it. The growth opportunity is repeated until you get it. And my most vivid example of that in my own life, I've had several of them, but the most vivid one you have heard as well. But it's simply that I had 2 unsuccessful marriages and a bazillion, well, maybe not quite a bazillion, but a lot of unsuccessful relationships with the same guy. Only he looked different. He had a different name, and he had a different job, and he drove a different car, and he had different tastes and habits and things, but basically the same guy. Because I hadn't gotten the growth opportunity that was there for me in relationships. And so I just kept having the same opportunity over and over again until I made some changes, until I shifted, until I grew, until I connected with the God of my being in a more powerful way, until I became someone anew, who I already was, but I wasn't expressing. It was only then that I could attract Mr. Wonderful into my life and have, the most blessed relationship that I could ever ask for and more, and he feels the same way. How do you like that? Go figure. And 25 years this month, next month, as a matter of fact, is 25 years of marriage next month, at the end of next month. So you don't have to clap for that. You can do it in March. We'll talk about it again, I'm quite sure. So the third idea, expanding on idea number 2, which is it repeats until you get it. It actually doesn't just repeat. It gets louder. It repeats louder. David Owen Ritz, a lovely religious science minister, once said that if we don't get the opportunity, if we don't take the growth opportunity, it'll go away, change its clothes, get its friends, and come back. Right? So until we embrace the change, sometimes it looks like things get harder. And then we go back to that old paradigm of we're getting tested in life's lessons, and then we think we're being punished. You're not being punished. There is no punishment here. It is simply your soul wanting desperately to get your attention, and you haven't yet paid attention. At least you haven't paid attention enough to take the personal responsibility to do the 4th point that I want to make this morning, and that is that at any moment you can change. Don't give me this, I can't change, this is just the way I am. I don't buy it. You can change. And every experience that you have that you don't like, and even some that you do, are inviting you into a higher way of being, and you get to respond to that or not, but you can. You can get it on the first go-round when the experience is easy, when it's not that tough, but it wakes you up. You can get it, or you can let the next one come, which might be a little bit more challenging, or the next one. You get to decide. At any moment, you decide. You are in charge. But the great thing about it is you're not alone. You're not alone on this journey. You're not alone in this. Ernest Holmes tells us, and again, there's the second time he uses the word lessons, so I'm going to ask us to just shift that to opportunities for growth. He says, even in our troubles, we are not cast down. And though we may appear to be deserted, we are not destroyed. All our experiences are working to the end that we learn the lessons of life, that we take the growth opportunity and return to the Father's house as freed souls. There is one reason, and one reason only, we have growth opportunities. I've said it before already this morning, but I want to say it again in a different way. The only reason we have challenging life experiences, that our essence calls us into these experiences, is for us to heal the false belief of separation. To heal the false belief that we are separate from God. To heal the false belief it's God and me. It isn't God and you. It is God as you. You, a living expression of the divine. You, a walking, talking emanation of spirit. You, a creation of the Creator and a creator. You are one as God, not one and God. So that is why That's the reason that we invite, consciously or not, usually not consciously, into our experience these things that we will call life lessons, so that we might express that image and likeness of God in a higher way, in a more powerful way. So I want to leave you with the other parable, the other one that Spirit nudged me to tell you, and I fought, but Spirit won. So here it is. It's a story of a group of women who were in a Bible study, and they were studying a passage out of Malachi, and the passage said, "He will sit as a refiner and purifier of gold." Well, these women were curious about that statement. What did that mean? He will sit as a refiner and purifier of gold. Or of silver. What could that possibly mean? So they decided, one of them said, I will go find a goldsmith, or a silversmith. And I have gold on my mind. Lonnie, that must be something about our anniversary. I don't know. I'm just saying. You know, hello. Actually, I'll take silver too, babe. It's all right. So the woman says, I will find a silversmith and just go observe him and ask him some questions about how he works, and I'll come back to our Bible study next week and report what I find out. So she finds a silversmith, and she doesn't tell him why she wants to come see him. She just asks if she can come watch him work and ask him a few questions. So, of course, he says yes. So off she goes to his studio, and she is watching him work. And she notices that the first thing he does is take a raw, if you will, piece of silver, and he holds it over the fire to let it heat up. And he explains to her that in refining silver, you have to hold it, it has to remain at the hottest part of the fire so that all the impurities will burn off. And she thought to herself, didn't say, but thought to herself, how many times has it felt to me like I've been held in a hot spot? I've been held in the fire. And I've blamed God for putting me there. I've blamed God for testing me, and I've been angry about that. And then she again thought, what does it mean? He is a refiner. He sits as a refiner and a purifier of silver. So she asked the silversmith, so is it true that you need to sit here like the whole time with this silver and watch it being refined? He says, oh, absolutely, yes. I have to sit here the entire time because I have to keep my eyes on it, because if I don't, if it gets too hot, there's a moment where if it's too hot, it will turn and it will be ruined. So I have to be here to remove it from the heat at exactly the right time. And the woman said, well, that's interesting. How do you know? How do you know when the right time is? And the silversmith said, oh, that's easy. It's when I can see my image in it. You got that, huh? So if you feel ever, now or ever, like your feet are being held to the fire, if you ever feel like you're being tested, I want to invite you to the belief that you are not being tested, but you are being refined from the inside out, so that God can be more fully expressed as, in, and through you. Let's pray. Each one of us, an exquisite piece of silver. Each one of us, that amazing raw material of God. Whole, perfect, and complete. The essence of all life, living as us. We are each already that. And yet we know in our humanness we forget that. We block that. We allow it to be blocked. And so in this moment, in the recognition that God is the givingness of life, eternal loving kindness and goodness, in knowing that that is true, and in knowing that we are one with that, we now have a shift a new way of looking at this idea of life's lessons and recognize that it is not life giving its lessons, but our own essence calling from within to be more fully expressed and attracting that into our lives which will allow it to be. So as the note from the universe offered us the advice, we give thanks, we embrace, and we bless the experience. This is what I have claimed for each of us right now, that we do that. We embrace, we bless, we give thanks for those experiences that have allowed the image of the divine to shine more fully through us. And if there is anyone in this moment going through the refining process, I accept and know that deep within there is a knowing that the essence of life is there, upholding, supporting, serving as this path is walked. And not only is that internal, but it is external as well, in the form at least as this spiritual community, as our spiritual life coaches and ministers, as friends here who are now family. I proclaim that as this refining process occurs in each of us, that the brighter light we shine is so amazing and so beautiful and so powerful. And the experience of that is so rich and joyous and fun and prosperous and energetic and vital. But I give thanks. I celebrate that. I am grateful for that. And I call that good. Oh, so very, very good. And in this gratitude, in this thanksgiving, in this celebration, I accept and know, I release and grow. And together we say, and so it is. Amen.